Hi, everybody. Welcome back again to Louise Edington, the Cosmic Owl, your Cyberpunk Witch Priestess to the stars, here with the week ahead forecast for March the 15th through to March the 21st, I think. Yes, March 21st. And so, as I went through the list, this is how I do it, right? I print off this whole list of things and I highlight really important things that I'm going to talk about, go through the day by day. And as I was highlighting, I was getting really excited. Things feel like they're changing. And then I pulled the cards and I got even more excited. But anyway, so I will go through day by day as usual, and show the cards at the beginning and then do the full card reading at the end. But before I do, I just want to remind you that we are a week away now from my Ceres Reborn Immersion. And I keep updating slides and more downloads keep coming and more ideas. So it's going to be off the hook. And I will say that this is, the first time I run classes like this are usually smaller, which means they'll be more intimate, which means there'll be more time for you. So with only a week to go, you might want to grab your spot. Okay, so the cards. Woohoo. Justice. Things are changing. 8 of Seeds. These are nice cards. Chariot. Things are changing. And the Harpy of Rage from the Witch Oracle deck. Ooh, I'm liking that one. So, as usual, I'm just going to set the chart for just for midnight, basically starting Sunday, tomorrow, Washington, D.C., because I have to pick a place and a time. And the US is under such crazy attack. And part of this video will cover the solstice too. So we will set the chart to the solstice, the point that the sun goes. Sorry, not the solstice. I keep calling it the solstice. I feel like it's such new beginnings, but it's the equinox, the equal day, equal night, and in the big turning of the cosmic wheel. So I will set the chart for the point where the sun moves into Aries for Washington, D.C., because that kind of gives a bit of an idea of where we're headed. And I don't have time to do so many separate videos. Okay, so here's where we are on March the 15th. Okay, tomorrow morning. Just look at this chart. Oh, everything is in this side of the chart, apart from Black Moon Lilith. And apart from Haumea, where is she? Oh, did I take her out? And I've overcrowded it a little bit, as usual, but that's because a lot of things are talking to me right now. So I'm adding Haumea. And I actually do want to take out the Uranus North Node, because that was for the Louis Theroux Manosphere video. Although they're all relevant right now. But yes, on this side of the chart, all we have is Black Moon Lilith, which is wandering back and forth between Sagittarius and Scorpio right now, because I use the true calculation. Haumea, which is retrograde over there in Scorpio. She is rebirth, regeneration, and the Virgo South Node. Everything else is in this side of the chart, which makes everything extremely intense. And then even more intense is that in Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries, in just 3 signs, we have the majority of the planets, even with my extras. Okay. Again, this is so concentrated, so intense, and we are in these intense times. But honestly, things are changing. In about 6 weeks, Uranus goes into Gemini, the last of the slower moving planets that are all changing signs pretty much together to change signs for the last time in this era. And, all these things are gathering steam. I've talked about it many times that we're at the ending of cycles and the beginning of cycles of so many planets, as of so many energies and cycles. So what I mean by a cycle is it's usually when two planets meet. That's the ending of a previous cycle where they traveled, together through kind of a new moon, full moon phase and went around, and then a new cycle begins. And then we've also got all of this being at the last two signs of the zodiac, and now starting to pile up in Aries, the first sign of the zodiac. Now, one thing I will point out is that Okiroe, Chiron, she was a seer, she was the daughter of Chiron, and she was very much, she had the gift of prophecy, but she was punished and silenced because she was turned into a horse, and punished by the patriarchy, of course, for speaking out and speaking truth, and about speaking her gifts of prophecy and intuition and things. And isn't that representative of what's been happening to the divine feminine in so many ways? But anyway, this is Okiroe. This is Chiron, both the wound and the medicine. And this is Eris, who reveals artifice and unpleasantness and greed and all the things of the hierarchical world that we live in. And of course, Ceres is here, but I'll talk about that in a minute. They're all at 24 degrees when we start the week. I will also say here's Ceres right at the start of the week at the last 2 minutes of Aries. So she's in a liminal space and about to change signs. And that's important because the workshop starts with her at 2 degrees Taurus, aspecting my natal Ceres. So can't make this up. Venus is at 10 Aries, which is the degree she stationed retrograde at last March, in the last Venus retrograde. So she is entering new ground again for the second time after that period. And what else was I going to say? Oh, also the sun is at 24 degrees for this. And so is Cariclo, who I seem to have taken off as well. So Cariclo and Chiron are heading to an opening sextile, but won't actually be exact until 2028. And this is from their conjunctions that happened in 1949. I might have to do a whole video on that. But anyway, 24 degrees, 24 degrees, 24, 24, 24. 2 is the number of the feminine, or the divine feminine. 4 is a number of stability. 2 plus 4 is 6. 6 is the Great Mother. And here she is being reborn. Anyway, you can deal with all that. So Mars was conjunct the North Node yesterday, which is very harpy of rage, to go back to the cards. But also Mercury and Mars are about to conjunct. So that's pretty harpy of rage too. And I call it righteous rage. And Jupiter is direct and has moved 1 minute now, so is on the move from the station degree. So things are really starting to shift. Things are starting to change. Let's dive in. Okay, for the week ahead. So we always start the week on the Sunday, and at 1:12 a.m. So almost very immediately as the day starts, Ceres leaves Aries and enters Taurus, where she will be for quite some time, where she was discovered. She was discovered at 2323 Taurus. I talk about that in my book. Ceres, I find, is most connected with the sign of Taurus, as Taurus, to my mind, is really kind of the most earthly of signs, because it's all about the senses, what you can see, hear, feel, touch, smell. It's about getting your hands in the dirt and things, and very great motherly. Yes, she is also really associated with Virgo because of the cereal and the wheat, and the association with our physical health needs. But overall, I still see her as more associated with Taurus. I don't think a planet rules a sign, but anyway. dump that word, but that's my opinion. Anyway, so also after Ceres moves into Taurus, okay, we then have the aspects starting to kick off. Neptune over here is now moved to 1 degree Aries, and aspects Black Moon Lilith, or rather Black Moon Lilith aspects Neptune, and this is kind of the where we've been shamed. You know, this is shame, where we feel shame, where we've been shamed, all as a collective. And here's the Manosphere documentary coming out with more shaming of women, but also shaming of men that are not kind of like the alpha kind of power over dominator kind of male. So all these things keep being revealed all the time, and this is an ongoing aspect. Okay, moving on a little bit. The moon starts the week in Aquarius, actually starts the week on the south node of the USA, but that happens every month, so we may get a little hit with that. But the moon will move up to 10 degrees and sextile Venus, actually at 11 degrees. And a sextile is an aspect of opportunity. The moon is heading towards Venus again for one of her gates of descent as she is descending as evening star. But this is kind of saying we are moving forward again. And then Black Moon Lilith dips back into Scorpio for a little while. But then the Aquarius moon will sextile asteroid Lilith, who I also appear not to have on here. And I'm going to put her on because she is important to my mind. So Black Moon Lilith is the shame. Asteroid Lilith is more like the rebellious talk to the hand. We're not doing this anymore. Kind of teenage girl energy. I like, you know, strong teenage girl. I don't mean immature in that way. I mean this powerful kind of like, no, we are not doing that anymore. So the moon then aspects Lilith, and these two are heading towards each other. So the divine feminine is piling up in so many ways. Alrighty, let's move on to March the 16th. And Uranus and Black Moon Lilith oppose each other again. And Uranus has now moved off. That's this degree that he's stationed at before he moved forward. He's moving out of Taurus finally to move into Gemini for about 7 years or so. And, you know, this is more awakening to this shame. We're recognizing where we've been shamed. We're recognizing the shame we feel of living under this patriarchal, hierarchical dominator culture, all of these things. So, the moon will then meet Chariklos, spinner of grace, and will aspect Okiroe, Chiron, and Eris. So that's all being highlighted as, you know, more and more people watch this documentary, more and more people see things in the Epstein files, more and more people recognize that it's these power-hungry, greedy dominator elites that are the problem everywhere. Okay, so anyway, then the moon will trine. Oh yeah, a nice kind of flowing aspect, but my apologies for kind of I couldn't tune in. It's because everything's so squashed together, it kind of makes the chart a bit uneven. But make an air grand trine to as an air trine, not grand trine, to Hygeia, which is preventative holistic health in Gemini. Communities speaking out. This is how we prevent and prevent this happening again, or show what we need to bring holistic health collectively. All right, so then on the 16th, Venus gets to 12 Aries and she squares off to Pholus. And remember, Pholus is kind of like about integrity. The lids come off. it's kind of like the Pandora's box. We're seeing like these sins fly out, or the lack of integrity within ourselves to a degree as well, but in the collective in this case. And in Capricorn, the structures of our society, and in Aries, let's call it in the toxic manosphere again. We're just seeing it more and more. And so then the Aquarius moon gets to 28 degrees and squares off to Uranus. And Uranus is the modern guide for Aquarius. And this is kind of going to bring more awakenings, more reveals, more revelation, more talk of revelation too, because that's what, this toxic Christian Zionist kind of evangelical power over culture, dominator culture, is talking about as well. We're literally talking about Revelation, the book of, which is the revealing. Okay, so then the sun will also square off to Hygeia, shining a light on that as well. And the sun, of course, is in Pisces, which is the sign of interconnectedness and chaos, and all the fact that everything is entangled, and we are not anything without each other, if you like. Okay, so we finish the 16th. The moon enters Pisces for a couple of days, and we head towards the new moon, because we have the new moon in Pisces, and the moon will aspect Ceres, and aspect Hygeia. Of course, these things happen. I mean, Sedna. But, sorry, Mercury in Pisces retrograde is kind of making my tongue like this. But anyway, but this is the first time that the moon will aspect Ceres after moving into Taurus. And Ceres is about all those senses, needs, and values. And we're seeing how our needs are being unmet and how we must meet our own needs to help those of the others. We must really ground in our humanness, in my opinion. All right, finally, on the 16th, the sun in Pisces will sextile Juno, which is, it was the goddess for women and children. So again, all those things coming up. But she's also our sacred contracts with each other. Capricorn, how the structures we've chosen to build are not meeting their purpose, shall we say. All right, on to 17th, which is St. Patrick's Day. So if you celebrate, happy St. Patrick's Day. Please don't call it Paddy's Day. I don't know. I lived in Ireland. I'm a bit like about that. But anyway, no, you do you. So the moon will, in Pisces, meet all of these Pisces energies, of course. That begins with Vesta, your inner flame. So it's tuning into that intuition, adding to that Mercury retrograde in Pisces, asking you to trust your inner knowing, your intuition. And then I'm going to skip some aspects here. The moon will reach the north node and will conjunct Mercury, and then will conjunct Mars. And all of this really is aspecting while the moon reaches a watery trine to Jupiter, which expands everything. This is expanding this HARPY of rage, if you like. It's expanding this speaking out. I'm a little bit obsessed with the site threads now. It's turning out to be, well, my algorithm at least is one of, screw the patriarchy, let's take it down, let's bring on the matriarchy. It's talking about all this toxicity, and it's just a powerhouse of powerful women saying we're done with this. So, that's very Piscean as well, kind of like this revealing, but also in the online space. And it's that energy of saying, how dare you say compassion is wrong? How dare you say this? You know, which is what the toxic masculinity has been saying. So it's just on the rise, just everywhere. It's wonderful for me. I know some people might not like it, but yeah, there we go. So that's March 17th, really. Jupiter's expanding it all, expanding that need for, you know, the rise of mothering, nurturing, caring, things like that. 18th. This will be the day of the new moon, but the moon starts the day at 16 and the new moon is right at the end of the day. So it's actually on the 19th for some people. But on the way to the new moon, the moon will meet Pallas Athena in Pisces. She is really kind of seeing into these hidden spaces and creating a bit of a strategy for raising up this energy of intuition and rebirth and just kind of being in that uncertainty and chaos as well. And then the moon will meet Nessus. Oh, and Nessus is still revealing more toxicity and things. It's just, yeah, it's horrible. I know, but I love how it's being revealed. Let's put it that way. Vesta, meanwhile, gets to 3 degrees and makes a lovely watery trine with Almea, regeneration. The matriarchy is being regenerated. I promise you it's coming. You can see it more and more. Okay, Venus on the 18th actually reaches 15 degrees of Aries, the middle degree, and squares off to Jupiter. And that's a closing cycle to one that began the day I published my series book, August the 12th last year. And 15 degrees are kind of a turning point as well. And Venus in Aries is very assertive, shall we say. And she is saying, oh, no. We are not doing this anymore. We are taking a stand for our values, our relationships, our femininity, all those kind of things, our creativity. And she is saying, it's time to take action on this in a big way. And because this is a crossroads as Venus starts to head towards Jupiter again, that's all I wanted to say about that. And a releasing of things that began last August that you've been working on, or things that are not working anymore, so that clear the way to work on manifesting what you do want, because Venus and Jupiter are really connected to manifestation in its real sense. Okay, so because with Venus being earthly desires, by the way, and Jupiter being the natural laws of the universe, there's so many layers to all of this. Okay, so also on March the 18th, as we approach the new moon, which is not till the end of the day, the sun will actually make a sextile to Uranus. So really the new moon is sextile to Uranus. This adds to that sense of awakening, to revelation, shocks, all these kind of things coming out, okay, in the dark of the new moon. And then Mars over here, I'm not going to mention every lunar aspect, there's too many. Mars will make an aspect to Pholus, the integrity, lid comes off kind of thing. And that's kind of saying, oh, we're seeing more. We're seeing even more. On the 18th, right before the new moon, of course the moon aspects Uranus too, but I've talked about that, Chiron and Okyuroi actually meet, and this is father and son, and as she was punished for prophesying what would happen to him with the wound and the healing as well. The poisoned arrow that wounded his heel, and it would not heal, and so he gave up his immortality to save Prometheus, so that he would also be free of his pain and he would die. Anyway, so this is really shining a light on on the wound of this toxic masculinity. And I'm thinking we will start to see how we can foresee and heal this now with that gift of prophecy, which is bringing in that divine intuition, seer quality that the divine feminine really has. Okay. And then, yeah, that's that. Okay. So let's move on, because I did a whole video on the new moon, of course. March the 19th, after the new moon, the moon's still in the dark, though, obviously, at the start of the day. The moon moves into Aries for a couple of days, joins all the action energy, and will pass all of these over the next couple of days. But Eris and Okiroe meet on that first day, helping us to see even more about the toxicity of the patriarchy, of the hierarchy, all of that kind of stuff. You know, you do know this is not just about men, of course. I've said it often enough. Okay, so the Pisces moon, most important aspects on that day will meet Neptune, then meet Saturn, activating that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And again, this is really kind of showing us, you know, I know everybody thinks, and maybe I'm wrong, a lot of people are thinking that this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, you know, is revealing the war, well, or started the war, caused the war. I think it's more revealing it, because it's kind of this holy war. It's Neptune is source and spirit, and Saturn is the rules. And so it's revealing all this stuff that's, you know, this fighting between all of these power-hungry, greedy heads of countries, but also in or every country involved in this conflict, this war, is, as I've mentioned before, connected to one of the three monotheistic religions. So it's kind of like this last big battle between them for dominance, and I don't think any of them are going to win as such, personally, because they're all suck. Not the religions themselves, don't get upset, although I think religion is bad, but anyway. And then the moon will sextile Pluto at 4 degrees Aries and Aquarius, and will activate the degree of where these slow moving planets all speak to each other in July, after Uranus has gone into Gemini. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto will all speak to each other at 4 degrees in July. And, you know, this is just, I really think that is such a major turning point. Just one amongst many, though. Okay, then also on the 19th, Chiron follows his daughter Okiroe and meets Eris. And Eris is really throwing the apple in now and revealing how this world we live in is harming, like, all the outsiders, all, you know, all those that feel left out, all those that don't fit this vision of what it is to be a male, to be powerful and greedy and all of those things. Excuse me. And the moon finishes the day with a square to Pholus, so you can see all of that. Okay, so on March the 20th. All right, I'm just going to get to the day and go through some of the aspects quickly and then show you the actual solstice chart. So as you can see, equinox chart, sorry. As you can see, the moon is at the very last degree of Pisces on Friday, Venus Day. Woohoo! I always love Venus Day. And the moon is in Pisces for Venus Day. Sorry, is in Aries for Venus Day and meets Venus. And that is one of her gates. And this one is just, again, highlighting exactly what we've talked about, because then the moon meets Eris pretty much exactly. They're square to Jupiter, expanding everything, saying, we're not doing this anymore. yet again. Amazing things. Now then, I am going to change the chart now. So the sun moves into Aries at 10:45 a.m. Washington DC time. And as this sets the scene for really the next quarter-ish, it's a bit like a solar return chart in that way. Where it's set will impact what happens. This is all in the collective houses pretty much of the chart. All of the Pisces energy up here and some of the Aquarius is in the most public house of visibility and things. Then all of the Aries is in the collective causes, the house of causes, politics, all of those things. And this is going to bring a real new beginning in these areas, in my opinion. It's also going to bring, of course, more out revealing in those areas. Then we have a 13-degree Gemini rising, which is square to the eclipse degree from March the 3rd. And it's the number of the goddess, the witch, and it's the number of change. And I think we are changing our perspectives and so on. We've also got an Aquarius midheaven for this degree, which is really kind of saying, you know, the future is in the collective, the humanity, and so much more I could say about that. But this is the equinox moment. Jupiter is in the house of the second house of self-esteem, self-worth, core values, and money, of course. But you know, so I do see some expansion there. But the South Node is in the past, is in the basis of the chart and the basis of security, and saying what's happening is not supporting us in any way, shape or form. Everything I look at really kind of points to the ending of this toxic whatever that we live in, and everything is moving towards these new beginnings. It's still going to take a while, but it's moving towards it. But right after the sun moves into Aries, I don't do this very often, but I'm going to do it for this day. So Friday, Venus Day, is a really big day because the sun moves in, as you saw, at 10:45 a.m. Then at 3:32 p.m., Mercury goes direct, conjunct that North Node, and will pass over the North Node again and start retracing its steps. And so that's more forward movement of things that have been revealed, and things that are we've been revealing and reviewing and recreating and redoing and all those things. But this is another great number. This is the number of stability, infinity, and where we are headed. You know, I just love these charts. All right. But after that, on the 20th, the Aries moon has moved on and will activate all of these three, which are now all at 25 degrees, all still traveling together for a little bit. Okiro is fastest moving. She will move on quite quickly. This is the evening before my Ceres Reborn Immersion. She moves to 2 degrees and starts to oppose Almea. Regeneration. I picked the dates for a reason. But anyway, so she's being reborn. Anyway, so will you find her in your chart, though? That's the question. But anyway, so the moon will go over all these toxic wounds and things that we have been revealed. Right, on to the last day. I think March the 21st, my wedding anniversary. I better get a card. I think I forgot last year. That was the first time ever. But, you know, we've been married 29 years on this day, so, you know, and we're kind of like just like It's kind of weird. We pick the same things when we go out to restaurants to eat. We if we go to see a band, which we do a lot, we went to one last night. We always buy the same band shirt. These things are, because we just always like the same things. We're almost like twins. It's kind of weird, but it's awesome too. But anyway, Saturday. The moon finishes up its journey through Aries and will start to gain light when it moves more than 30 degrees past the sun, and that happens pretty much after the moon enters Taurus at 2:35 a.m. on Saturday the 21st. Yes, I'm doing the Ceres Immersion on my wedding anniversary, but that's okay. And so then the moon meets Ceres, which is just lovely as well, really pulling us down to get us rooted in our senses, in our humanness, get us very grounded, also grounded in those values, saying, I have to make sure needs are met. And of course, then the moon opposes Haumea as well, and then will square Pluto. I've talked many times about this ongoing square where they had 13 exact squares that started in 22 and will finish in 28, and this is regenerating and rebirthing after the collapse, which is the tower. Things are starting to move, everything says so. Then Venus. Okay, Venus meets asteroid Lilith, and this is again more of the divine feminine, kind of standing up and saying, end the patriarchy, actually at 18 degrees, which is, and 1 + 8 is 9, and saying, that's an ending. 1 is masculine, 8 is infinity in Aries, sign of both new beginnings, but also that divine masculine energy in all of us. Patriarchy's going. Because Venus and asteroid Lilith, you could say they are kind of like Adam's two wives. They're teaming up now to say no more. Because he was married to Lilith first. She was the first original female, and she would not submit. And then Eve was created in the myth and was more submissive. Of course, these myths were created to have the divine feminine lesser than the divine masculine. But anyway, ranting again. Last aspect for the whole week is, yes, it's for the whole week, is Mars over here will actually make a trine to Jupiter. And Mars has kind of been, Mars is a bit more spiritual warrior in Pisces, but Pisces has been revealing that toxicity and things. But the good side of it is more, what I would say, good sides of the divine masculine are starting to rise up and be more of an example, and so on and so forth, and saying, this isn't right, we don't want this either, and this is in everybody, of course, as well. Anyway, there's the aspects. I'll be so glad when Mercury's direct. So next week's, hopefully I'll be less rambly. The cards. So we have Justice. Justice is coming. And a reminder that I've switched to the Red Seeds Tarot and not the Red Threads, which I was using for a long time. And I've done that because this is the Demeter, Persephone, Hades journey. Okay, so card number, it's number 8. Oh. This is, I am accountable. Somewhere in your life, you may be feeling the need for justice and are demanding resolution, balance, and integrity. We may be angry, Yep. Or you may be too. Do you need to explore your own actions and opinions prior to handing out harsh judgments? Have you been unjust? If so, where does that arise from? Your shadow holds your unconscious rage. You are encouraged to find your own truth and to be truthful with yourself in all things. Oh, sorry. You may become involved in legalities. I think that we'll see more of this in the collective, or need to find resolutions in areas of your life that have broken down. This is an unjust world that creates immense inequality in many parts of society. We all have a responsibility to help create a better world in whichever way we can. So there you go. And the next card, 8 of Seeds. I am productive. This is. Each day of my life, I am sowing seeds that one day I will harvest, and that's very relevant for a new moon. It's planting seeds. You are validated and know that your skills are appreciated and acknowledged. Your work and service is productive and will reap rewards that may be financial, emotional, or spiritual. This is a good time to assess in which direction your work might be going. Does your work truly encompass who you are? Or perhaps you might feel you need to add to your skills. For now, admire your efforts that have led to some achievement and recognition. And I don't mean in terms of greed and all that, you know what I mean. But acknowledge that you all have talents and abilities that are an important part of who you are. Hard work, commitment, determination, and tending will continue to improve your skills and deliver satisfaction in your life. That feels very Virgo South Node. Meaningful, satisfying, useful work. Right. Okay, so then I pulled the Chariot, which is change coming. Woohoo! But let me read you what this book says, because these books are just have a different flavor. This is momentum. So it does say, challenges are still ahead and there may be obstacles on the road, but trust that you are moving to where you need to be. So things are changing. I said that at the start. All right, let's finish with the Harpy of Rage. That is card number 35. Doesn't help, I'm tired today too. Oh, we went to see 9 Inch Nails, Trent Reznor last night. It was an amazing show. I'd never seen him live, and I'm so glad that I did. It was fantastic. But anyway, I'm still tired. So anyway, this is the Harpy of Rage. We've had her before. I'm just going to actually read the last bit of the book. No, I'm going to read it all because I think it's important, especially with Mercury, Mars, North Node all lined up this week. That's kind of like sacred rage. And rage, this is the book. Rage can be purifying, like the harpies of Homeric poems. Rage can bring the storm winds that scour and wipe a landscape clean. While this may seem a destructive force on the surface, rage, like the harpies, can bring change and shift landscapes, both internal and external. Quiet or loud, a wild howl or a hiss in the dark, anger is both purposeful and natural. So stop bottling it and shoving it away in order to be pleasing. The most powerful witch gathers her rage rather than shrieking into the wind where her passion can be swallowed. She will find her branch and settle into a position of power. I'm going to hold her up again. They're hard to see because they're shiny, but I do post a photo on my Substack. But she offers her anger to her art, her cause, her community, resulting in a rallying song of change. a witch pours her rage into her creativity, advocacy, and commitment. She's also willing to peck out and devour rage against her own self through the radical wings of self-forgiveness. There you go. Oh, what a week. Anyway, I'll get this off to you, and just know that things are really going to start changing fast, fast, fast. Love you.